I'm at the point of the trip where you start thinking, would I be there if I had driven? I would have been there an hour ago if I stopped to pee like once. I'm in the Charlotte airport, which I have decided is the busiest airport on the planet. And I've decided I can do a video because everybody else in here is like full on watching movies or talking on the phone really loud. I mean, all's fair in love and war, right? Who's calling me? Someone's calling me. If you have lost an item, like what? Jewelry, license? I might not know I've lost an item. I was walking a little while ago, and I heard something hit, and it sounded like a license. Let me see what's in my bag. Because that can be bad. Oh, no, it's right there. I'm safe. I went to Bad Daddy's Burger, which is really good, and was sitting beside these cute young girls who graduated from NC State, and I think they said 2022, and they were so cute. They're going to Key West for the weekend, and I was just sitting there thinking, gosh, do you remember when you were young and hip and doing all sorts of fun stuff? You know? Look. Maybe I was real crowded in here. I'm headed to Savannah to go speak at the Matthew Reardon Center for Autism tomorrow. And then tomorrow night I'll be flying back to Raleigh and picking up my son Thomas on Friday. Yep. That's what I'm doing. And I was sitting here catching up on a little news. I'm not one to... well, that's a lie. Never mind, that's not true. I'm not one... I have gotten better in my old age. I don't like to just try to have problems with politics for no reason, right? But did you see what happened in Alabama? So, Alabama University, which is the largest... the University of Alabama in Birmingham is the largest healthcare provider in the state. They have now paused in vitro fertilization because the Supreme Court ruled that frozen embryos are children. Now, what do y'all think about that? And then I'll tell you what I think about it. I probably, honestly, can only see the top of my head. Well, I'm not, maybe you need to move your phone. I probably err on being pro-life to a point that a lot of people don't agree with, and that's okay. You know, we live in a country where people are allowed to have opinions and rules, but an embryo, which is a fertilized egg and sperm put together in a dish, to me, there is no heartbeat. You can't count something with no heartbeat as a child. So the University of Alabama medical system has stopped in vitro because they're nervous that if something happens, they could be liable. You see up to my chest. I don't understand why people can't see me. Seriously? I can see myself. I don't know what to tell you. And you might say, well, that's silly. They're just, blah, blah, blah. Do you know why the lawsuit came about in the first place? So listen to this. In the decision released on Friday, I'm going to read it to you. Okay. Two wrongful death suits were allowed to proceed against a Mobile fertility clinic. in effect ruling that fertilized eggs and embryos are children. The lawsuits relate to a 2021 incident during which a patient at the Mobile Center for Reproductive Medicine somehow got into the clinic's cryogenic nursery is what they call it, and removed several embryos. Well, when they picked up the embryos, they store them in sub-zero temperatures, super cold. So imagine they picked them up in a glass thing, and they burned the person's hand because they were so cold. And the person dropped the embryos on the floor, and they, splattered or whatever. Well, the 3 couples who lost the embryos, they sued for wrongful death. Wrongful death. I get that they are upset, but wrongful death? Wrongful death is you ran over a child because you didn't stop at the crosswalk. Wrongful death is not this. So if embryos are children, are they dependents? Are they eligible for tax purposes? Oh, Kathy, you sound like an attorney, a real one. I don't know. That is a good point. You could have a zillion embryos and then claim them on your taxes. Oh my God, I might try to see if I've got any eggs and get those suckers out of here. Yeah, move to Alabama. What if you had 400 embryos? I have to pay taxes. So the clinic claimed that the Alabama's Wrongful Death of a Minor Act did not apply to embryos outside the womb. In agreement with that argument, the Mobile County Circuit Court Judge Jill Phillips ruled to dismiss the case. But 8 judges on the Alabama Supreme Court overturned the ruling. The Alabama Supreme Court, Jay Mitchell, who thinks he's, smarty McSmart, Jay Mitchell ruled to dismiss the case. He insisted that the embryos were protected under the state's existing law. Here's what he said. Now, this is right. The central question presented in those consolidated appeals, which involve the death of embryos kept in a cryogenic nursery, is whether the act contains an unwritten exception to the rule for extrauterine children. That is, unborn children who are located outside of a biological uterus at the time they are killed. Under existing black letter law, the answer to that question is no. The Wrongful Death of a Minor Act applies to all unborn children, regardless of their location. It applies to all children, born and unborn, without limitation. So that would mean that you're counting a newborn baby as, you're counting these as equal to walking humans. I'm not even talking about, to me, you could have a debate of, I'm 8 months pregnant. To me, that person has their own life. I know people might disagree with me, but an embryo does not have a heartbeat. It's like AI, right? Does anybody disagree with me? Does anybody disagree in general? I just don't get it. And what's really sad about this is that all these poor people that want to have a baby. You want to talk about wanting to have a baby. Ooh, travel credit for $200 to switch your flight. Should I switch? I'll do it for $400. I never get paid. But, what if those were the embryos of a cancer patient harvested before chemo? What if they were? I don't get what you're saying. I don't want to throw them in the trash. Nobody's talking about throwing them in the trash. But if they don't make it in your womb for whatever reason, it's not murder. I just think you're really pushing it there. Pushing it so much that now people can't even have IVF. And that is sad because people need IVF. I didn't, but it would have been awful. You know, there are people, and all they want is a darn baby. You know, that's all they want is a baby. And darn it, I want them to have one. Not all embryos are going to become a living baby. I had 11 embryos throughout 2 IVF cycles. And out of 11, one ended up with one baby. So now you have people that, like, let's just say today they were getting ready to put their husband's sperm with their eggs. Well, now they have to freeze the eggs, and there's no more. Embryos now have more rights than a woman who wants to have an abortion. What's he saying? I mean, you can't hear. This person needs a microphone. Anyway, it kind of reminds me of public education in North Carolina with like the vouchers and stuff. You think it doesn't apply to you. You think it's no big deal. And then suddenly more and more and more and more. And then it hits home, you know. And I would say that this is hitting home for people in Alabama, particularly those who were planning to have an embryo implanted. And it's not just so easy to take your embryo and go to another state. What if you're in the middle of it? It's expensive. Can you deport a woman because she's carrying an embryo who would be a U.S. citizen? Oh, these are such good questions. All the clinics are closed. And you know what? I wonder who is on that darn Supreme Court. I bet it's a bunch of white men. And yes, I'm a racist. It's official. Go ahead and just say it. Adrienne is a racist. Yes, I am. And if you want to become a subscriber because of that, feel free. Let's see here. Alabama Supreme Court geniuses. Let's look. Ooh, this was a good article. I forgot I'd seen this one. Mary Ziegler wrote this. She teaches law at UC Davis. And she said this Supreme Court ruling will transform infertility care across the state because of what exactly somebody just said, that an embryo outside the womb has constitutional rights. What happens if their embryo is left over? Well, oftentimes they just leave them frozen or they give them to somebody else. I've had friends who had leftover embryos and they just went and got them implanted and then nothing happened, but it made them feel better. You know? Now there's embryo adoption, which is pretty cool. And again, yeah, tax deductible. In the United States today, recognizing the value of an embryo sets a precedent that no state can permit access to abortion, and that anyone who chooses abortion may be committing a crime. And I tell you what, I don't love abortion. I can't believe I'm at the airport. But I do think, I want people to have the right to a morning after pill? Hell yeah, I do. Or a 10-year-old child that's raped? Yes. Yes, I do. Yes. Yes. Yes, I do. Because I'm not a dumbass. The irony in the Alabama court's decision is that more Americans who want to be parents will be unable to achieve that dream. Well, that's what I said. The ruling is extraordinary, not only in declaring personhood before birth, but in applying the idea to embryos that haven't even been implanted. The ruling is not just bizarre, but the consequences will be profound. Some abortion opponents argue that if embryos are persons, each one that is created must be implanted. That would make even storing embryos for future use impermissible. So you couldn't store embryos for later. Because I guess you can't put humans in the freezer? And then it could happen in other states. 2% of births all involve IVF. The success rate of each IVF cycle can be low given the age and previous medical condition of the patient. The average cycle costs $12,000 to $30,000, even when patients can use embryos they've already created. The Alabama Supreme Court agreed that embryos were persons. The people of the state deserve legal protection. It did not matter to the court whether the embryos were frozen and not yet implanted in the uterus. Chief Justice Tom Parker suggested that divine law, which he claimed had been embraced by the people of America, supported the court's conclusion: human life cannot be wrongly destroyed without incurring the wrath of a holy God. Now, you know what I hate more than a white man Supreme Court justice? I hate one that pretends to be a Christian and like a preacher. You can't suddenly become a preacher when you have said something that works for you. Right? It's egg and sperm hooked together. There's no heartbeat. How can you be alive with no heartbeat? That's like you could say that if I wanted to get my eggs out, or men, put some, what, in a cup and spilled it out, are they going to get charged? Shoo. At the 1-year anniversary of the reversal of Roe versus Wade, leading groups from the Alliance Defending Freedom to Students for Life called for personhood for preborn children. I think being 6 months pregnant and a blastocyst are very different things. Ooh, look, but this is talking about tax deductions. But do you remember when the lady was pregnant and she tried to drive in the lane for 2 people and she got a ticket? Yeah. I mean, what? That's not fair. If an embryonic life has value, the state shouldn't start with criminalization. Instead, the government may have a constitutional obligation to advance its interest in protecting that life in ways that don't limit reproductive liberty. I think it's nuts. My daughter-in-law is going through IVF with a clinic in Charlotte and is transferring to another clinic, and they will not let her take her eggs with her. Never heard of that. Are you sure? I bet we could call about that. And they'd hand over those eggs. Maybe you can't get them out of the freezer, Oh, I wanted to find out though who was on the. Let's look who's on the court. We got a woman on there, 2 women, Sarah and Alyssa. We got Greg Shaw. Let's see. Greg Shaw. Oh God, I can't look at all of them at one time. It's nuts. So when you think things don't affect you, think again, Tootsies. Think again. I think there's a woman that thinks I'm talking to her. She's smiling at me. Oh, she's watching my video. Look. had a mute on. Anyway, it's nuts. Okay, headed to Savannah. Subscribers, see you shortly. We'll check in when I get in the Uber to make sure I don't get hijacked.